Welcome to the Real World. My name is Cameron. Thank you so much for joining us on episode 87 of the Real World podcast. Today we're talking all about Ghostbusters. Thank you for joining us here in the Real World. If you're new, make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos. Thank you so much. We are so close to 500. We can hit it this week. We just need a few more subscribers. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Share this on social media with your friends. That would help us a ton. Thank you so much for joining us on this fun episode about Ghostbusters. All the Ghostbusters movies are going to be reviewed and ranked by the end of this podcast, so make sure you stick around for that. Let's kick things off, though, as we usually do, with some movie news. Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, dropped its first trailer online. Rebel Moon was one of my favorite movies of last year. Zack Snyder is a visionary director. Cannot wait for the sequel to his sci-fi epic. Very excited about this. Looks like it's going to be very action heavy. A war movie is how it's been described. So really excited about this dropping in April. Rian Johnson signed a 2-picture deal with Warner Brothers. That's right. He's going to make 2 films for the studio. This writer-director is one of the most popular and divisive filmmakers of recent years. He's, of course, known for directing Looper, as well as Star Wars: The Last Jedi. His most recent films, Knives Out and Glass Onion, have been very popular with audiences. So I am ecstatic about this news. Really excited to see what he does over at Warner Brothers. The Boondock Saints are back. The 3rd film in this franchise is in development. Sean Patrick Flanery and Norman Reedus are both coming back to the roles that they originated in the first 2 Boondock Saints films. Very fun action movies. If you haven't checked those out, I would recommend both of them. The first one, I think, is superior to the sequel, but both are very fun, action-oriented films. Very interested to see how they continue the story with these characters in this 3rd film. Pierce Brosnan and Naomi Harris are both set to join Michael Fassbender and Cate Blanchett in Steven Soderbergh's spy thriller, Black Bag. The film does not have a release date yet, but they are set to start shooting very soon. All right, folks, well, that is it for movie news. Now it's time for our main topic, which is Ghostbusters. This big franchise that's been around for 40 years now, celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. It's Ghostbusters. There have been 5 Ghostbusters films released theatrically so far. There have been animated series. There have been toys, lunchboxes. I mean, all kinds of stuff. It kind of unwittingly became this big franchise. The people who made it definitely weren't expecting that. And but it's fun to talk about these movies. They've been around for a while. They've gone through different iterations. All kinds of different actors and directors have helmed these projects. So we wanted to just kind of basically review each movie in order that they were released. Joining me in this endeavor is Bert. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing really great. How you doing?
Doing well. Ready to go bust some ghosts. Ready to
Yeah.
get the slime all over us and enjoy this podcast on these wacky movies. It's kind of such a wacky idea, I mean, the original concept of Ghostbusters came from Dan Aykroyd, who's kind
Yeah,
of into the
yeah.
paranormal stuff.
You can tell
He's
this
a
is his baby, the first
Oh
one.
yeah, it's big time a passion project for him, and yeah, he's a true believer. I mean, this guy, he really goes into all these old tales of ghosts, and he's been to haunted houses and all kinds of other wild
Mm.
things. And so yeah, it's really his brainchild. Then he, of course, recruited Ivan Reitman, Harold Ramis, and of course Bill Murray to come along with him on this journey for this first film. So we can just dive into the first movie if you want. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. All right, so like we said, we're just going to jump in with this first movie made in 1984, directed by Ivan Reitman, who's a director I really like. I just pulled up his filmography here. I really like this guy as a director. I really like, of course, before this, he's known for movies like Meatballs and Stripes, which I think are both pretty solid
Stripes is a good one.
comedies. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like
Stripes
those
especially.
both with Bill Murray. I
And
do
Harold
enjoy
Ramis,
those.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
Mm.
so he's gone on though to direct several other movies I like. Kindergarten Cop is one of my favorite
Oh,
Schwarzenegger comedies. I really like that
sure.
one. He did a movie called Dave, which I think we've talked about.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we both like Dave a lot. That's a really good movie.
President movie.
Right, right. And then he did a Harrison Ford movie that I think is kind of underrated called 6 Days, 7 Nights with Anne Heche.
I never
Um,
saw that one.
it's pretty good. It's a fun little
Really?
adventure kind of comedy.
Huh.
Yeah, it's pretty solid. I would highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. But he's probably most well known for Ghostbusters. I mean, like I said, this has become a big franchise now, and so he helmed this first movie. Um, like we said before, Dan Aykroyd kind of came up with this idea. He had like I think a 40-page treatment originally when he handed it over to Ivan Reitman and Harold Ramis, who both kind of co-wrote the script and just did a great job. I really like the writing here is just hilarious. It's again going back to this concept of like regular guys. I mean, they're professors at a university, but they're very much regular guys who kind of are like ghost exterminators. That's kind of the idea behind it, right? It's like,
Yeah.
they have the jumpsuits and the whole thing, and they come into these buildings and we'll find these weird ghosts and weird happenings going on, and they'll have to trap the ghosts somehow. And yeah, they're very much like, pest control, kind of exterminators, but with
Yeah.
ghosts. So it's just a wild idea that totally works. I mean, on paper, if I was a studio executive given this, I'd be like, "What is? I don't get it." I would probably reject it. But thankfully, whoever was in charge greenlit it, and I think this is one of those movies that I kind of consider lightning in a bottle. It's like all
Mm.
the elements came together at just the right time. The actors, the director, the writing, the producers, all of it, and the effects. We'll talk about the music, all of it just comes together in such a way that is kind of like impossible to replicate. And it's a thing that I think is just so
Yeah.
specific and so unique
Yeah.
that I really like it. I think this is one of the best comedies, one of my favorite comedies. I've watched it so many times over the years. Um, and it really doesn't follow a kind of traditional uh, story structure. It's really kind of just like normal guys doing their job, kind of like they come up with this weird job and they save the city. Like they kind of go through that, but they don't really like have major character arcs necessarily, or they don't have that traditional kind of like, it's kind of like introduction and then, something, crazy happens. And then, the end is kind of this, I don't know. It has certain elements of like a three-act structure, but it's a very odd kind of screenplay. But again, it works, I think,
Yeah.
mostly because of the cast and the direction. Because the cast, you can tell, obviously, Aykroyd is very passionate about it. He's the heart. You have Ramis, he's kind of playing the brain. He's kind of
Yeah.
intelligent one who never smiles. He might have a conscious decision to never smile in the movie. And then of course Bill Murray, who's just kind of like whatever. I mean, he doesn't really care. He's very sarcastic. He's kind of, the one that's kind of on the sidelines doing that kind of thing. He's not really into it, but he's a great element of the film. And so all of that,
Yeah.
again, all of that works so well. The effects I'll talk about for a minute. It's so well done because a lot of it's practical, right? It's back in the 80s before CGI days, so there's a lot of
Yeah.
optical effects and things like that. But most of it is just on set kind of practical stuff that they're doing. I was listening
Mhm.
to the commentary, and they were talking about as the director, Ivan Reitman, Harold Ramis, and one of the producers, and they were talking about that opening scene in the library where the
Yeah.
librarian's kind of walking around, and you have that shot of the books kind of floating by. That's all in camera. That's just basically books on a wire that they had up
Yeah.
above the out of frame.
That's
And then
great. Yeah.
the shelves coming out, the drawers coming out. That was all just
Yeah. Yeah.
people behind the wall pushing the drawers out and shooting air
Yeah.
cannons so that the cards flew out. It's just stuff like that that I really like,
Yeah.
especially when it's well done and it's done.
Mhm.
The atmosphere of that opening scene is kind of basically like a horror movie. I mean, it's not really any comedy in it. And so they establish it that way, and then they kind of the comedy naturally comes into it through the characters, which I
Yeah.
think is really really smart. And again, the cast, the chemistry between them is great. Of course, we also have Sigourney Weaver in there, who's fantastic. She hadn't done a comedy at this point in her career. She really wanted to do
Mm.
one, And so when this came across, her desk or whatever, her agent, she signed up and she was ready to go. And she just does a fully committed performance from Sigourney Weaver. I mean, she's
Yeah.
doing some wild stuff, and it's really, really fun to
Hmm.
watch. Rick Moranis, of course, is in there as well, and he's hysterical. He's one of my favorite comedic actors. I think he's great in this. So all of that works really well. Again, visual storytelling, I feel like here is very strong. That whole opening scene, there's no dialogue. It's basically just this, again, a librarian walking through, and you kind of just the
Yeah.
story
Yeah.
is told visually. And they do that several times throughout. There's several visual gags that go on that are really fun.
Hmm.
And there's great dialogue too, and all of that's very well delivered. But I'm a big fan of doing things visually, when it comes to the medium of film. Um, I'll also mention the music. Of course, there's the iconic song by Ray Parker Jr.,
Yeah.
which is, I think pretty much anyone in America knows. Even if you haven't seen Ghostbusters, you know the song. It's just kind of permeated the culture at this point. I found out an interesting piece of trivia. I didn't know he was sued by Huey Lewis. Did you know this?
I knew he was sued, but I didn't know it was by Huey Lewis.
Yeah, Huey Lewis had a song that came out either the same year or the year before called I Want a New Drug.
Oh,
And he
sure. Yeah.
said that
Yeah.
the melody was so similar, he had to file a lawsuit
You're
against
right.
him.
Now that you say that,
Yeah, yeah.
as
And
I
they
played
ended
the
up,
song in my head.
right, right. They ended up settling it out of court. But
Oh,
yeah, I thought that was interesting. Interesting bit of trivia. Sometimes that happens. But look, every melody's been used at this point, right? We're
yeah.
like so
Yeah.
many years
Variations
of
of,
music,
yeah.
right? So it's hard to do that. But it's a great song. It kind of tells the whole story of the Ghostbusters very succinctly and is very
Yeah.
catchy. What doesn't get enough credit though is the score.
Yeah.
Elmer
Yeah.
Bernstein, this guy is prolific. I mean, this guy had been working for decades in Hollywood at this point, in the 80s. And man, he just does a great job. Again, playing into the horror. It's got very
Hmm.
scary
Hmm.
moments, and then he's got kind of the lighter, kind of funner moments too. Really, really solid score. So I wanted to highlight that for sure. Um, yeah, again, I'd say for me, Reitman is the MVP here. I mean, they're all so good. You kind of, again, I don't think it would work without any one of them. But if I had to single one out, it would be the director. The way he wrangles this cast. I would imagine they'd be a little unruly. I'm sure they'd like to improvise. They all came from like, improv comedy backgrounds. And so to
Yeah.
wrangle that cast and to tell this story and to present it again visually in an effective way that really worked. I would say, he's definitely deserves a lot of praise for this film. So I'm a big fan of the first Ghostbusters. We're not going to reveal our star ratings because we're ranking them at the end. So by the way we talk about them, you might be able to figure out where we're going to rank these. But yeah, this is a great movie, a great comedy that I'm a big fan of. So Bert, why don't you take it away? Give us your thoughts on the original Ghostbusters.
Yeah. I saw this when I was pretty young, and the librarian scared me. And I mostly liked that. As you know, I like horror movies a fair bit.
Sure.
And so I want to start out with that.
Hmm.
Um, and obviously you talked about the visuals and the song, but the film got two Oscar nominations, and it was for visual
Oh,
effects and song.
right.
And so that's worth pointing out too. So the song that drew a lawsuit, yeah, ended up getting nominated. So I bet he would like that one too.
Right.
Um, um, Bill Murray, he's pretty good at taking these ludicrous, in especially ghost situations, and drawing out the humor. I mean, we got Scrooged, just a few years after this,
Right.
and it's kind of a similar sort of take. He's a little, more of a jerk maybe in that movie,
Sure.
but I mean, he's the one that really elevates this from a light comedy to heavily comedy, because I consider this film a comedy. It's not a
Yeah.
horror movie.
Mm.
It's more of a horror comedy.
Yeah.
And so the amount of comedy we get is really what makes it. There's so many, laugh out loud time moments and lines like, dogs and cats living together. I mean, there's just so many. Yeah,
Right.
you bet that Bill Murray probably came up with a lot of those too,
Yes. Yes.
Um, the visuals are really, especially for its time, are really really good. Yeah, obviously pre Jurassic Park age.
Right.
And I don't know how exactly they created some of the visuals. You mentioned the lighting, or what did you say,
Yeah.
lighting effects?
Yeah, lighting effects, opticals,
Yeah,
miniatures. They kind of used everything. The Blu-ray I have has a whole
projection probably.
featurette, right, on the special effects,
Okay.
and they went into detail on, Yeah, they
Yeah.
used every trick in the book basically that they had available.
Yeah. Yeah. So most of the visuals work. Yeah, the song you mentioned the song and some of the other songs in the movie are kind of that weren't hits or maybe a little bit not so. I mean, they're very 80s specific and not necessarily
Sure.
in the best way,
Right.
but they don't detract from the film per se.
Yeah.
And yeah, that score, it's so good. The lighter moments of it when
Mhm.
it's the guys just sort of like hanging out and whatever.
Yeah.
They reuse some of that score throughout the series too, which
Oh,
is
sure.
pretty easy to spot.
Yep.
So yeah, it was nailed in that regard, and for the actual sort of horror bits, where it's supposed to be
Yes.
scary.
Exactly.
Uh, um, I like the film a lot. To me, where it does kind of, I wouldn't say it falls apart, but where it doesn't like hold up quite as well is that last act,
Mm.
because what this is building to is obviously yeah, it's the brainchild of Dan Aykroyd, and he probably had this thing in his head where like, oh, there's Gozer and Zool, and the executives at the studio are probably like, oh, please don't let this be an absolute disaster,
Right.
because what it leads up to, I mean, it's fine,
Yeah.
with the Marshmallow Man and the the ending is good. It's fun how they cross the streams, all that's good.
Yeah.
It's just
Right.
plot wise, I don't know if it propels me to like necessarily a great conclusion, but it's fun. It's just for
Yeah.
fun.
Right.
So but all around, yeah, very good film. I mean, your comments nailed it too. I mean, it's one I've seen many times over the years.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Tons of fun. Yeah, I like it. I almost like it more and more every time I watch it. I feel like it's really, really good. I watched it a couple nights ago, like I said, with the commentary on and watched all the behind the scenes, and I've got it on the background right now here. So yeah, I'm a pretty big fan of the original Ghostbusters. Good stuff. Let's move on to Ghostbusters 2, released in 1989, also directed by Ivan Reitman. The cast comes back as well. Unfortunately, to me, they lose the magic here. They don't really quite
Yeah,
hit the highs of that original, which just goes to show you again. I feel like that first one's kind of lightning in a bottle. You know, even getting the same
yeah,
cast and crew back, they still weren't able to quite make it as
yeah,
funny or as engaging or as interesting as the original. It's kind of one of those sequels that plays it safe, I feel like, in many regards kind of is
yeah,
just a rehash of the first one in many ways. It's in New York again, and they got to bust some ghosts again. It's not much different there. So it feels a little bit like a cash grab, and that's kind of what it was. I mean, I think even some of the actors and producers have admitted like the first one was such a surprise hit. We weren't expecting it to be so big. We had to make a sequel, so this is what they ended up with. And yeah, some things are interesting, like where the characters go because we're meeting them, years later, and kind of where they're at is kind of interesting, in some regards. There are some funny moments. There's some interesting ideas. I do like, seeing the Statue of Liberty walk down the, Central Park West, wherever it is, and they're all kind of sitting in there and doing their thing. That's kind of fun. There's some cool visuals. But again, I just feel like not enough passion went into it. I feel like they were kind of just there, because they had to be in a way. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. There's still some, again, some enjoyable moments. It's just nowhere near the original. Coming off that original movie, it really feels kind of like a lackluster sequel. So I wouldn't say it's one of the worst sequels ever necessarily. Again, I think there are some moments that I like, but yeah, it definitely doesn't quite reach the highs of the original, like I said. So, Bert, what are your thoughts on Ghostbusters 2?
I'm glad they didn't rush it, because legitimately they waited 5 years
It's
to make
true,
sure they
yeah.
could shore everything up, have a great script,
Right.
some great comedy, better effects.
Right.
Oh man, I saw this in the theater. Just disappointed from the first time I
Yeah.
saw it. From
Mm,
from the very first scene, actually,
yeah.
and the plot's kind of all over the place.
Right.
I mean, I don't really get why it's the same people and the same types of circumstances, but I'm not laughing in this second film.
Right. Right. Yeah, it is odd, isn't it? Because you would think,
Yeah,
yeah, you got the same actors, you've got similar situations, but I think again, because the first one had done it so well, that
yeah,
when you're just trying to do that again, it doesn't translate for some reason. It doesn't doesn't fit, doesn't work. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, and then you've got Peter McNichol as that Frenchman, and his character is just kind of annoying,
Yeah,
and the guy in the painting is just
yeah,
bizarre,
it
and not
is.
in a good way.
Right.
And then I'm spoilers here. I mean, this is 30, 40 years old, something like that. But
Right.
I mean, these some of these ideas where like that the slime can sense when people are getting angry,
Yeah, very
and
strange
then
ideas.
it gets like the ending where oh, it's so bad. Where the New Yorkers have to sing
Right.
to bring out happiness to make the slime. It just it's
Yeah,
cringy. Just and it
right.
just I really didn't want them to go there, but they did.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like reminds me of the ending of Elf.
Yes, I was about to say Elf.
So schmaltzy and
Right.
just did not dig it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of part two.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it had its heart in the right place. I think the message they're trying to get across is kind of cool and kind of like a
Yeah,
worthy
yeah.
message of like, but yeah, for whatever reason, it just falls flat. So yeah, Ghostbusters 2, definitely a letdown. All right, moving on to our next one. It's years later, decades later, in fact. We get film again, simply titled Ghostbusters. I guess it was released overseas as Ghostbusters Answer the Call. That's an alternate
Yes,
title
yeah.
it has,
Mhm.
which I kind of like better because it kind of just sets it apart more. But
Yeah, me too.
yeah, 2016, this film was released, um, directed by Paul Feig. He's directed some movies I actually really like.
Yeah,
I like,
yeah.
I think one of your favorite comedies is The Heat. That's
Maybe
a
the
funny
best of all
movie.
time.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
is a funny movie. I like that. I liked A Simple Favor he did, which was
Hmm.
kind of darker comedy,
Oh,
which was interesting. So he's made several that I've enjoyed. He basically decided to, well, him and the writer, I guess, decided to obviously recast. We're not doing a third Ghostbusters where it's the original crew back. It's an
yeah,
all
yeah.
new cast. It's kind of a reboot, remake in some ways, um, which is an interesting idea. That's been done many times in Hollywood, and it's worked to varying degrees. Um, this I saw this for the first time this week. I'd kind of avoided
Oh,
this
yeah.
because I am a big fan of the original. I heard a lot of bad things on the original release. It was very vitriolic, there's a lot of negative
Yes.
reviews and comments
That is
and
out there.
all
Hmm.
kinds of craziness went on when this movie came out. People were up in arms. And so I ended up checking it out. Look, I was like, hey, if it's good, it's good. Again, I like Paul Feig. I like a lot of the cast member, Kristen Wiig. I'm a big fan of her. Melissa McCarthy, I really like. Kate McKinnon
Yeah.
and Leslie Jones, I'm a little more mixed on. I feel like they work in as long as they're used correctly, like in smaller doses, I feel like, because they have
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
big kind of personalities and things like that. So going in, I tried to go in with as clear a mind as I could, just ready to kind of enjoy and sit back and watch a Ghostbusters movie. Um, to me, I would say it's a mixed leaning negative. I don't
Mm.
think it's nearly as bad as many people say it is. It's
Hmm.
not a total train wreck. It's not total trash or anything like that. I think this is fairly well made. First of all, technically, it's very
Yeah.
well made, very well shot. The effects are excellent, throughout the film. So on that level, it works really well. For me, the issues came with the script and the direction. I felt like we're a little bit off
Oh.
at times. I think the cast, like I mentioned, I'm a fan of all these actors. Chris Hemsworth's in there, who I'm a big fan of. I
Hmm.
think just if they had been given a little more direction in their characterizations and in their relationships, like they set up a really cool relationship with Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy. They're kind of friends that kind of had this falling out,
Yeah.
and they to me just didn't quite capitalize on that the way that they could have. I would have rather seen them
Hmm.
butting heads a little bit more throughout the movie. And then
Okay.
there's kind of a great ending moment with them at the end of the movie, that I think would have hit a lot harder if throughout the film they were maybe bickering a little bit more. Um,
Hmm.
so I think that could have been improved. But look, I was laughing out loud several times in the movie. There are several very funny moments, funny lines, funny visual gags, again, that I wouldn't put on par with the original, but I would say I got some laughs out of it. I had fun watching it. Um, I think one of my other issues was uh, the ending becomes very big, a lot bigger than I thought it would be. Kind of
Hmm.
becomes more action oriented than
Yeah.
comedy oriented, which is something that I was kind of like, this looks cool, but I kind of wanted some more jokes sprinkled throughout it, maybe. I don't know. So the ending didn't fully work for me for this one. But again, the I had a good time watching it. I really did. I really enjoyed myself for the most part. I just think there are certain character elements, certain story elements that could have been improved upon to make me give it a fully positive review. So I'm again like mixed to negative on it right now. Hemsworth to me too was kind of kind of shortchanged. Like his character's very dim-witted, like the whole movie. That's the whole gag there, and it I kind of felt was overplayed a little bit. Like the first scene with
Mm.
him's pretty funny, and then as it went on, I'm like, okay, this is kind of just getting ridiculous.
Mm.
So a little much. They took things a little too far in certain areas. Again, I think that the script just needed some fine tuning. The director needed to kind of give some more direction. I feel like, and I've actually seen interviews with him where he's kind of talking about, I kind of just let the cast go. I let them ad lib, I let them do their
Oh.
thing, and I kind of let them take over the movie. And so
Mm.
I feel like with Ivan Reitman, you had a director who was kind of letting his cast do that, but also reining them in enough to make the story work and make it all land. Whereas here it felt a little messier. So those are my thoughts on Ghostbusters. Again, not bad, not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. I was expecting kind of a train wreck, a dumpster fire, but I really enjoyed it for the most part. So that's where I'm at on Ghostbusters. Answer the call, as we'll call it. Bert, what are your thoughts on this remake or reboot?
I'm glad you didn't hate it. I actually really like the film. I'm
Okay,
gonna go
okay,
with the
cool.
naysayers.
Okay.
I can't help but think that some of that may be political,
Mm,
um,
I'm sure.
various shapes. And that's about as far as we'll get into politics on this.
Sure,
You
right.
know what I mean? But I can't help it. It's got to be some of that because yeah, this movie
Yeah.
is not a terrible movie.
No, no, it's
I
not.
just don't see it.
Yeah.
It is actually kind of a Saturday Night Live reunion, of course.
Sure.
And personally, I just, there's so many big laughs that I have in this
Mm,
film. I will admit it's a little bit disjointed sometimes, some of the scenes,
yeah.
but, but there's just so many big laughs. And then, Chris Hemsworth, yeah, I mean, the way he plays Ditzy to me is just hysterical. This is why I love, Thor 3 and 4, and a lot of people hate it. For some reason, I just think he's hilarious when he does that kind of stuff.
Right, right.
And he does some of that in the latter Thor movies.
Sure.
Um, so and I think there's actually some decent scares in this film and some great callbacks to the original films, even though yeah, obviously like let's see, Bill Murray and others make, cameos and they're not playing, I don't think they're playing the same roles, but Dan Aykroyd
Right.
appears briefly, I think, and so
Yeah.
on. And they use the hearse, they use the same logo, they briefly visit the original Ghostbusters headquarters. So I like all
Right.
those callbacks too, so that's good.
Hmm.
Um, so I get a lot out of this, and one of the big reasons that I get so much out of the film, I try not to talk about 3D too much because most people don't have a 3D setup, and nor are they going to go seek it out. But I just got to explain with this film, has one of the best. It's some of the best 3D I've ever seen,
Oh, wow.
and the director actually uses something called frame breaking. And do you know what that is?
I haven't heard of that, no.
Yeah, it's more of a, like, if you're into 3D, you'll probably know more about it. So what that is there's a handful of films that employ what they call frame breaking. And so when the movie's on your TV, it's obviously widescreen, and so but there are bars at the top and bottom.
Okay.
So some 3D movies at certain moments in the film, when there's a 3D effect, they'll actually extend the 3D effect to go into the black bars.
Oh,
Like it literally
interesting.
jumps out past the screen.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't know how they do it, but they literally add additional content to the film for the person watching it in 3D.
That's
So,
great.
yeah. So an example is pretty much every time they shoot their what are they, like, plasma guns or whatever they
Yeah, the
are.
proton packs, yeah.
Yeah. So every time they shoot that and it's coming toward the screen, it's within the frame, but it also extends out past the frame vertically,
Wow,
up and down. So it
that's
really
cool.
pops out and
Yeah,
makes it like extreme 3D.
right.
And so, like I said, there's only a handful of films that do that, but it works
Mhm.
to great effect. Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2 do that a little bit in theirs as
Um,
well. So,
hmm,
so I get that most people won't be able to get what I'm talking about, but
sure.
so I not only do I like the movie, but the 3D just makes it so engaging
Yeah.
throughout a lot of the films. So that's my thoughts on Answer the Call.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, that's cool to know. I like that. I'm a fan of 3D too. Yeah, I don't have the 3D setup, but yeah, I could see how that could definitely enhance any viewing experience and
Yeah,
make it a favorite. So that's cool. Very cool. All right. Moving right along to 2021. So the 2016 film obviously was divisive to say the least. Didn't make a ton of money, and so they decided to take a different approach and kind of do more instead of a remake or a reboot. They just decided to do kind of like a soft reboot where it's basically one of these legacy sequels where it's like, okay, the original Ghostbusters movies happened, the first two, and it's years later now, and so their grandkids are gonna find out about
yeah,
ghost busting and this whole thing. And so I like this approach. It's very like uh, uh, a kind of a recent trend, I guess. Tron Legacy did that kind of thing. Blade Runner did
yeah,
it. Star Wars kind of did it too. And so it's a cool concept. We also have part of the Ghostbusters family, Ivan Reitman's son, Jason Reitman, directing,
yeah.
which I
That's
think
cool.
is a big reason why this movie works as well as it does because Jason Reitman is kind of known for like indie dramas, like he did like Up in the Air with George Clooney, and he's
Right.
done a lot of like more dramatic fare. Um, and bringing him in is a really interesting idea. And the film, it's to me is less a comedy. There's definitely funny moments throughout it, but it really is kind of more of just like a almost like a family drama in many ways.
Yeah, yeah.
It does have that vibe. Like I said, it certainly has funny moments, fun moments, kind of silly moments in it too. But it's a lot more kind of heartfelt. It's kind of a heartfelt ode to the original films and the original
Right.
cast, and they get to come back in their roles and do the whole thing. So I like the unique setting. I like that it's a small town, kind of in a small town with big fields of grass, and it's just cool to see ghost busting in that setting when we're so used to seeing it in the city.
Yeah.
I like
Right.
that change up. I think that was smart. It was, the fun sequence of the Ecto one, the uncovered Ecto one chasing the ghost through the streets, is a fun moment.
Yeah.
And I like the cast, Paul Rudd, he's, one of my favorites, and Carrie Coon is great in this as well. Of course, Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things, and then McKenna Grace, who I think she's the standout here for me. She's the actor that I just really connected with and really liked her
Hmm.
performance a lot.
Yeah.
Um, so I really enjoyed the whole dynamic though between those characters. And yeah, the way they brought in the original cast, I thought it worked really well. I thought it was a really clever way to do it. They kind of at the very, very end when they come in to kind of help out, felt a little like they were kind of overshadowing the new cast a little bit too much, maybe. But it was still a fun moment. Um, of course, we got to talk about CGI Harold Ramis for a minute because that's something that's become very divisive, in film, and of
Ah,
course, especially now with AI. It's become very like, are we going to get a new John Wayne movie? And even though he's been dead for however many years, it's kind of
right.
strange. I'm sure the family improved. I'm sure. I don't think
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
people involved would have done it without approval, but it is just a little odd. But I think it's also kind of cool because he was such a vital part of that original team and was, obviously, a co-writer, so he was pretty passionate about it. So, I like this movie. I think it's fun. I think it's enjoyable. It's a cool way to bring the franchise back. I do remember seeing this. This was the first one I got to see in theaters, so I had a blast with it. So, what are your thoughts on Afterlife, Bert?
Yeah, I really like the departure from the big city. They need to do something different with it at
Yeah.
this point. And so they did kind of the complete opposite setting. So that works really well. I think it's a really good looking film. Like I
It
really like the
is.
the color tones
Yeah.
in it. And I think the script is pretty funny. There's quite a few times it cracks me up. A few of the jokes don't land, but
Sure.
I laugh quite a few times throughout, so that's good. This is a Ghostbusters film.
Right.
And so unfortunately, yeah, I kind of feel like the plot it inevitably goes the same direction as the first one, and
Yeah.
I kind of felt like it could have maybe had something a little more original than that.
Hmm.
But it's fine. I mean, I also at the same time kind of like that they, recall it and bring it back in, and then yeah, the tribute to Harold Ramis. I mean, all those guys I think adored Harold Ramis,
Yeah.
so they, it's their tribute to him, and they
Right.
might hold on to that a little bit too long. Maybe a
Hmm.
few, too many moments of Harold Ramis and in action mode, not
Yeah.
speaking,
Right.
but I think most of the film worked for me. So I really like this new spin on the franchise.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Yeah, there are yeah, certain moments that, like you said, they linger a little too long. There's also a little bit of too much product placement in the movie. Like there's like a whole
Yeah,
shot of Walmart. There's like a whole sequence of
I
Walmart
know.
like in the middle of the
Yeah,
movie. It's kind of odd. But hey, I guess you got to pay for the movie somehow. So
right.
yeah, that's Afterlife. Again, 2021. That one was released. All right, well, that brings us to 2024. This weekend, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire was released in theaters. This is the sequel to Ghostbusters Afterlife in the same continuity. Paul Rudd's back, Carrie Coon's back, McKenna Grace, Finn Wolfhard, as well as the original cast, this time in much more prominent roles. So I was looking forward to this. I really liked the trailers. It had kind of a creepy vibe, seemed like it was maybe leaning a little more into the horror elements. And so I was interested going in. Um, Unfortunately, the film is a pretty big letdown for me. Uh, Pretty much on the
Hmm.
same bar with, I would say, Ghostbusters 2. Like, you had
Oh
a
wow.
great idea with Afterlife, and it, kind of revitalized the franchise in a cool way. Um, and then the sequel, it tries to go bigger, obviously with the cast. Like I said, the original cast members, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson are all back. Um, and to me, the film just never quite balanced out the cast as well as it should have. I really would have preferred, I think, staying more with the newer cast because what they did with the original cast is really nothing interesting. I mean, Ernie Hudson's
Hmm.
character Winston, there's some kind of interesting developments with him and figuring out what he's been up to. That was kind of interesting, but yeah, the rest of it just fell kind of flat. Um, the action sequences even, which I was looking forward to, didn't really deliver. I wasn't really engaged in any of those. Large portions of it get very boring, just with a lot of exposition trying to explain what's going on with the new villain
Hmm.
and all that. So
Oh,
yeah, pretty big letdown for me. I, yeah, I think that the film just really needed to be kind of honed in a little bit more, and kind of, maybe another draft of the screenplay or something. It is a different director. It's not Jason Reitman.
okay.
It's a different director that stepped in, and that's probably has a lot to do with it as well. Kind of his touch is missing from the film, that the heart, that Afterlife out is really missing. So yeah,
Hmm.
I didn't get a lot out of it. It was kind of a bit of a dull experience, honestly. I only laughed maybe twice throughout the movie.
Wow.
And so yeah, it's a pretty big disappointment as a Ghostbusters movie, as a just a movie in general. Feels kind of like one of those movies that had a lot of studio notes, like, we want to make sure we get this in and that in, and it's
Yeah.
like just kind of a mess. So yeah, a lack of vision behind it, I think, is what really had a lot to do with. And it's one of these things where they're again constantly referencing the original films, which I get. They're iconic. That first film is so beloved that you kind of, I imagine it would be hard as a filmmaker not to constantly call back to it. But I feel like at this point it's like been beaten to death. It's like you've called back to everything you can. They bring back William Atherton from the
Yeah.
original in this
Yeah.
one. And I like him, but it's just his character's the exact same. He's just trying to shut the Ghostbusters down again. And it's like we've been through all this, guys. Like it's the
Is he
same thing.
still the
There's kind of
mayor, or what's his
he's the
capacity in
mayor,
this one?
yeah. He's still the mayor,
Oh,
I guess. I don't
oh
know how
wow.
he's still the mayor after
No
all.
term limits. That's good.
Right, exactly. So yeah, kind of bizarre, but it's one of those things. Again, it has some cool ideas in it. There's some ideas in it that are actually interesting and different, but they're just not fully explored or executed
Hmm.
very well. Character development really isn't there, like I said. Overall, it just kind of falls flat. It's like, man, these characters, do they have they done anything different in the past 40 years? It's like, no, they're still to their same old shenanigans. So, yeah, it's a bit odd. There are some fun visuals in it. There's very good effects, obviously, and all of that works very well. But yeah, overall, I didn't get a whole lot out of this one, unfortunately. So we'll see how it does. I want to say it's already made about 45 million this weekend, so it's doing fairly well. So we may get a third film in this kind of new series, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think they need to veer away from the original cast, like you said. Like I like seeing them, but like at the end of Afterlife when they're there, I didn't really laugh at anything they were doing. So
Right.
it's pure nostalgia. So I was
Mm,
hoping you would say that at least the original, like at least Bill Murray was hilarious or something like that. But I with the Ghostbusters films, the whole point is the comedy
yeah.
because they're not actually really trying to scare at least adults. And we know nothing, a ghost isn't gonna, you know, kill one of the characters. It's not that kind of movie. So we're there for the comedy. So you got to
Yeah.
bring the comedy.
Yeah, it's unfortunately it seems like it's veered away from that, especially in this movie. Whereas the last movie had a lot of funny moments, but it kind of leaned more into the dramatic elements and the kind of,
Or go a
nostalgia.
dramatic route. Yeah.
But this one,
Right.
like you're saying, they don't bring in enough comedy, but they're trying, It's just not working. And
Yep. Yeah.
the villain is pretty scary, like visually just kind of frightening
Oh
and,
yeah.
and scary looking,
Yeah.
much more than any of the villains in the past. So it's like
Hmm.
maybe they could lean in more into the horror, but yeah, it's a comedy franchise that I feel like is it's kind of lost its way. It's like maybe
Yeah.
it feels like it's kind of trying to become Marvel, honestly, is what it feels like. It's like
Uh
they're trying to be a big action franchise, and
well, they
that's
had
just
Thor, and he did he come back?
right. You bring Thor in. Yeah, Thor versus Ghost or something. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the way is forward for this franchise. I feel
Hmm.
like they
Yeah.
at this point need to go way back to like just a basic self-contained smaller movie about just again focusing on the characters and the comedy elements or again leaning more into the horror or something else and kind of figuring out what it needs to be moving forward because yeah this just it felt like it was so bland, like it wasn't really anything, like it wasn't an action
Yeah.
movie, it wasn't a comedy, it wasn't quite a horror, it wasn't
Wow.
it it was just a mess.
That's a
So
pity.
yeah, that's how I felt about it. It's getting pretty mixed reaction from most critics, but I'm sure there are several people out there that really enjoyed it. So um, let us know what you think in the comments below. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe you think it's the best movie of the year. Let me know in the comments below. But now that we're done reviewing all of the Ghostbusters films, we are going to rank them from our least favorite to our favorite. So I'll have five on my list. Bert will have four on his. Um, are you ready to rank them, Bert?
Let's go.
So I'm going to start with my number five. In the fifth slot, I have Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. So
Oh
I do
wow.
think this is actually the worst Ghostbusters movie. It's the one that I liked the least
Hmm.
coming out of the theater. Again, I've only seen it once. Maybe on rewatch I'll like it a little better, but I kind of doubt it. Not looking forward to rewatching it again, honestly. So I got that one at 1.5 stars. A pretty low rating for me. One of the lowest rated of the year so far, down there with Argyle. So
Wow.
that's what I have at number five. Bert, what do you have at your number four?
The only one I didn't like, which is Ghostbusters 2.
Hmm. Okay.
And yeah, big letdown. Pretty much go the whole movie without laughing. I think it was longer too than the original, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
wasn't there. I'm at 1.5 stars on that one.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. My number four, it was really close between my number four and my number three.
Hmm.
Um, I did end up putting Answer the Call at four. I have it at 2 stars.
Hmm.
And I think probably because I felt like there was a lot of potential there. to make it a great movie that I just kind of saw
Hmm.
the misses in it more than I did with some of the others. So yeah, that's what I have at number four. As you mentioned before, something I forgot to mention is the cameos by the original cast felt very odd and out of place to me and kind of forced. So that was another thing that kind of
Yeah.
took me out of the movie. Like I almost wish they hadn't even been in it at all.
You're right. It was
Or
almost like, oh, here we got to create a scene so that we can have Bill Murray be in this film. So that scene
exactly.
only serves that purpose pretty much.
That's true. That's
Sure, I get
exactly
that.
right.
Yeah.
So that was a big reason that I didn't enjoy it. I would have rather maybe just had like a picture of them on the wall or something. Like you could mention them
Gotcha.
or something like that. But yeah, it didn't really work for me at all. So but again, I laughed several times throughout it. I didn't hate it at all. I wouldn't mind watching it again. So it's not a terrible movie, but not one that I can say I fully endorse. So that's at my number four. What do you have at number three?
I That's where I put Afterlife. And
Oh, okay.
I thought it was a great sort of reimagining of it.
Hmm.
Um maybe it's another one that they should have left the original cast out of because it
Right.
didn't add a whole lot. Nice tribute to, Ramus, but
Sure.
the plot follows kind of the original one too. So I really enjoy it. It's got a great look to it, and
Mm,
so I wish that was, say, part one of a trilogy where they keep getting better.
yeah.
That would be best case.
Yep.
But anyway, that's what I've got at number three. Oh, I'd
Great.
probably get
Great.
3.5 stars on that one.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah. My number three, I have Ghostbusters 2, 2.5 stars. Again, very much a mixed bag. I feel like I kind of like seeing the original cast back and where they've kind of gone in their lives. It's kind of fun to catch up with them and find out what's going on, but ultimately kind of a letdown when it comes to the story and
Yeah,
the rest of it. So yes, that's what I had at three, 2.5 stars for Ghostbusters 2. Bert, what do you have at number two?
that's where I put the original one is at number
Oh,
two.
okay.
And if it was a little better in that last act, it
Mm,
might be up there as like a 4.5 star film. I've currently got it at it's 3.5, 4.
okay.
But I thoroughly enjoy it every time I watch it.
Yeah.
But again, I'm there for the comedy. It's it makes me laugh quite a bit.
Yeah, same here. All right. My number two is Ghostbusters Afterlife. Gave that 3.5 stars. Really like it. A great kind of return to form for the franchise in many ways. A great way to bring it back. Maybe that's what they should have called it, back to life. Bring it back to life. It's a really, really fun movie. Really enjoyable. Like you're saying, the visuals are great. The writing is really good. The acting's great. So it's one that I definitely would like to revisit soon. All right, Bert, give
Yeah.
us your number one.
Not a popular opinion, but my favorite one currently, at least, is Ghostbusters Answer the Call from 2016. And look, I get, like I said, I mean, is it a perfect film? No. I laugh quite a bit throughout the film. That's what I know about it. It makes me laugh, and I think the visuals are a step up from CGI. I mean, it's not really a fair fight, I guess, per se, with
Right.
some of the original films, but I think the visuals look great in this film itself too. And so, I mean, not the greatest ending, but I have this at 4 stars with a 3D element. It's basically 5 star entertainment. I mean, I'm just loving every minute of it. So, but as a film, 4 star film, I would say.
Gotcha. Great. Excellent. I love these controversial picks. This is good. Let us know how Crazy Bird is in the comments. Um,
Please, yeah, yeah.
my number one, of course, is the original Ghostbusters from 1984. It's the only one of them I own. It's and I think Answer the Call is the only one you own, right?
Yeah, it's the only one
On
I own
disc.
currently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, the original to me it can't be beat. It's one of the classic comedies, one of the best from the 80s. Honestly, like I said before, a movie I watch every time I watch it, I like it more. I catch little things. I laugh more. The cast is just so good. That cast is so good together. And the writing, direction, music, like we talked about,
Yeah.
it all works so, so well. So yeah, that's my number one. 4.5 stars is where I'm at on
Okay.
that. Like I
Okay.
said, one of my favorites. So
Nice.
all right, well that's it for our Ghostbusters podcast. We've reviewed them, we've ranked them. Now it's your turn down in the comments. Let us know your favorite Ghostbusters movie. Let us know, how crazy we are for our picks. Maybe I'm crazy about Frozen Empire. Maybe Bert's crazy about the 2016 remake. I don't know. Let us know down there. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you share this on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, so you can follow us there. Bert and I are both on Letterboxd as well, so you can give us a follow over there if you want to check out our reviews. Bert, this was tons of fun. Thanks for joining me, man.
Yeah, always glad to be here.
Excellent. Again, make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe. We're almost at 400 or at 500. We're almost at 500 subscribers, so we are really, really excited about that. That is a big milestone for us. So make sure you again share this online with your friends so they can like and subscribe as well. Thank you again for joining us. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time right here on The Real World.